All right, welcome into this edition of the Chief Zone podcast. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Very excited to have you guys on. We have a very special guest joining us right now on the podcast. Very little time to waste. Let's get right into it. He is a Chiefs Hall of Famer. He holds the NFL record, tying several others for most interceptions in a single game with four. Get his take on the Chiefs right now, talk about his playing career and also his foundation. Very excited to have him on, Chiefs Hall of Famer Deron Cherry. Deron, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the podcast. How are you today?
Oh man, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I'm doing fine and excited to speak with you today.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you on. You're a guest that I've been wanting to have on for quite some time. Looking back at your playing career, a lot of respect for everything you've done, everything you've accomplished. Definitely want to get into that later on. Before we get into some of the football content and all of that stuff, I definitely want to take some time and talk about your foundation, the Deron Cherry Foundation. For those who may not be familiar with your foundation, what is it exactly, and what motivated you to want to start this foundation?
Yeah, so it was motivated by a gentleman by the name of Bob Ritchie. He had approached me years ago, actually right after I retired, and said, "Hey, would you like to get involved in the community in a different way?" And basically, Len Dawson was doing pretty much the same thing with Truman Medical Center. He would host a golf tournament out there to raise funds for the hospital foundation and some of the things that they wanted to accomplish. And so Dr. Ritchie was in Raytown, was at Park Lane Medical Center, and Park Lane had a foundation, and he was on the board of that foundation and approached me about getting involved. So I said, sure, I'll get involved. We can do something like that as long as we figure out where the proceeds will go to, because number one, I wanted to help kids and give them an opportunity like I experienced when I was growing up in Palmyra, New Jersey. And so we came together and started this program called Score One for Health. And it was born out of I saw a story on Channel 5 TV of a girl that had a learning, they were getting ready to put her into a learning disability environment, special education. And she really, all she had was, they found out that she had it was a problem with her eyes, but it was correctable through glasses. And I said to myself, how many more of our kids are in school that have issues health wise and goes undetected, and then they get labeled as, they're either disobedient or they can't learn, when literally they have a physical issue that nobody has diagnosed. So we started this program of going into the schools and doing health screenings to make sure that these kids, as they started their career in education, that they knew what it felt like to be healthy, and that we would screen them to make sure that they were healthy as they started their career in education. And so that's how Score One for Health, which is the main charity that we have supported over the last years. It's actually been, this is our 33rd year, even though this is our 32nd year of the golf tournament, but we've been doing it for 33 years with Score One for Health, screening young people, making sure that they have a good, solid foundation as far as being able to build their life on education by being healthy, because that's the main thing, being healthy. And so we've been able to accomplish that. We screen close to 15,000 kids a year. Program has expanded not only in the Kansas City metropolitan area, but our partner is the University of Kansas City University, which is the osteopathic college here in Kansas City. They have another location down in Joplin, and we've been able to expand to Joplin as well, helping doing screenings in schools to make sure these kids are healthy as they start their career in education. And as we have branched out as a foundation, we've been working with kids that have cancer with Camp Quality. We just finished up a week of camp last week. We went up there and we had dinner for the campers. They have a week long where they can just be a kid again. So we help sponsor that. Midwest Animal Rescue help find homes for these animals that that are lost or stolen, or people that abuse these animals. We just go try to find a place and this organization has done a tremendous job of locating homes for those animals. And then our last one is answering the call, supporting our first responders, those people who put their life on the line for us every single day. We need to make sure that we're supporting them. So through an organization called Answering the Call, Ronnie Dumit is the CEO. We're able to support that organization and get needed funds to those families whose either an officer has gotten shot or killed in the line of duty, or firefighters who are injured in the line of duty. We try to get to their families and get them support right away as that unfortunate accident happens to them or their families. And we just want to make sure that we're there responding to their needs, for their loved ones. So we do a lot more things. We partner with Third and Long to provide Thanksgiving dinner last year, where we were able to double the amount of people that were able to get dinner for Thanksgiving. We had a Christmas giveaway for kids. We fed 300 families a pancake breakfast and got each individual a toy, and we had a bicycle raffle. So we do a lot of things in the community to help benefit the community, and we couldn't do that without tremendous sponsors that we have that graciously have supported us throughout these 32 years that we've been doing our golf event, which is coming up on September 21st. We have our auction here at United Beverage, which is my place of business. And then we have our golf tournament over 2 days at Creekmore Golf Course in Raymore, where we'll do Monday the 23rd and then on Tuesday the 24th. You can participate. We still have available spots if you'd like to golf and be a sponsor, or if you want to be a volunteer. You can see the information on the screen. We're so excited going into our 32nd year of the golf tournament. We're just happy that we've continued to have this event and to raise money to help support all these causes that we have in our community.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've got a big involvement with the community, which is very cool to see, and a lot of involvement there. I know you mentioned the information right there on the screen. For those who are listening to the audio version of this podcast, if you cannot see the information on the screen, you can get more information at DeronCherryFoundation.org. And for those who are watching on YouTube and on Facebook, if you're watching from your phone, you might not be able to scan the QR code, but there's still a way. So you can see that QR code right there that says learn more. What you can do is take a screenshot, and then once you take a screenshot, go to your photo gallery, click on that photo, and then hold that QR code. Put your thumb on the QR code for just 1 second, and then let go, and it'll take you to the website. So that's technology is pretty cool. That allows you to be able to do that without having to scan it through your camera. So definitely go to the Deron Cherry Foundation. I mean, and you get to the opportunity to rub elbows and play golf with some celebrities too. I mean, who could say no to that?
Oh yeah, definitely. We have a lot of local celebrities that participate over the 2 year. Some guys that are here in Kansas City that play for the Chiefs, and we even have some guys that play for other teams that are available. Some baseball players, soccer players. We have a whole group of celebrities that join us every year. They believe in what we're doing and what we accomplish, and what we're trying to accomplish in the community, and that is to make life better for everybody that we serve in our Kansas City community. So all the money that we raise stays here in Kansas City. We don't, we don't have paid people and employees. We have one employee that's paid, and that's our executive director, and she gets a little stipend. But other than that, every dollar that we raise goes towards our charities and keeping the money here in Kansas City.
All right. Well, if you guys want more information, for those watching on YouTube and Facebook, go ahead and take a screenshot right now. Go to your photo gallery. Just put your thumb on the QR code. Hold it for just a second, and you'll go on there. And for those listening on the audio version, go to DeronCherryFoundation.org for more information. Deron, I know Monday, I believe that was Alum Day for Chiefs training camp. Did you have an opportunity? I know you've been there in the past. Did you have an opportunity to go there this week?
Yeah, it was Ambassador Day up at training camp, so it's always nice to be part of that experience. I mean, the Chiefs have been so gracious to the ambassadors it's the only organization I think in the NFL where there's former players who continue to have an impact with the organization and help assist them in some of the community things that the Chiefs organization wants to do. And this was a baby of Lamar Hunt and has been carried on by Clark Hunt in the Chiefs organization. And I think you see the ambassadors around town, all out in the community, doing tremendous things to help support the organization. And, they had a special day for us yesterday at camp. We got to introduce ourselves to the current team, everybody that was present. And then they took us, had a nice reception and luncheon for us up at St. Joe Country Club, and gave us, Super Bowl rings for each and every ambassador, which no team has to do it. Clark Hunt is just such a tremendous leader in the Hunt family, and this is part of their legacy to make sure that they're still, once you retire from the Chiefs and have an opportunity to be an ambassador, you're still part of the family, and they treat you as such. And we've been really blessed and fortunate to have an organization that cares a lot about their former players and is willing to, still have that relationship that is so important once you leave the game of football.
Those Super Bowl rings, those have gotten bigger and bigger over the years. I mean, it just used to say, world champions, and now I think like the inside of the ring, you've got like the entire postseason. You can open up the ring, it comes out, the top comes off. What are your thoughts when you saw that?
Well, we have a different version of the ring, but it's still something that we'll cherish and treasure because, the guys that earn those rings deserve those rings. And so we're thankful that we have an opportunity to really showcase, through the rings that we receive through the organization. It's really a special tribute to us. And we are so grateful and thankful. I think every ambassador to the T is thankful and grateful to the Hunt family and the Chiefs organization for doing what they did. And we are so appreciative of the fact that they even recognize us as a member of that organization. And so we are really, really excited and happy to be a part of that special gift that they gave to us.
I do want to ask you about your time coming out of Rutgers, the whole process of trying to get ready for the NFL and eventually joining the Chiefs. You went undrafted, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the Chiefs did sign you initially, then they let you go, but then they brought you back. That whole process, leaving Rutgers, trying to prepare for the NFL draft, not getting drafted, and the Chiefs signing you a couple of times. What was that entire process like for you?
Well, originally, the Chiefs signed me as a punter. I was a free agent punter when they signed me. And Frank Gantz was the special teams coach and wanted to change my whole punting style. I never had a punt blocked in high school or college. And I averaged over 42 yards a kick in college. And he wanted to change my whole style. And, for me, I wasn't, that's like learning how to walk all over again once you've been doing something your entire life. And so I remember picking up the phone and calling Marv Levy and asking him if I could come back in and not only punt, but I could play quarterback. I was a quarterback in high school and played quarterback a little bit in college, and I played both safety positions. And so they had drafted 3 safeties that year, so I knew they were looking for safety help. And that was a position that I could play and was very successful at it in college. And when I got to camp, I saw the guys that they had drafted, and I said, man, I could play just as good as those guys. I just need to get a chance. So I asked Marv Levy, could I come back in and work at the safety position as well as punt? And thank God for him, and truly a blessing. And I say this uh, with a lot of humility. Had he not made that decision to let me come back, my whole life would have been entirely different. I wouldn't be a Chiefs Hall of Famer. I wouldn't even played in the National Football League, I don't believe. But the fact that he gave me that opportunity to come back in and work gave me an opportunity to showcase my abilities, and for them to look at me and say, hey, this kid can play. Let's give him an opportunity. And that's what happened. So I owe a lot of credit, not only to Marv Levy, but at the time, Ted Cottrell, who was my defensive coordinator in college and that came here to take position as the linebackers coach kind of stood up for me and said, "Hey, this kid can play, give him a chance." So that's how a lot of it worked out. And then as I got through that training camp, guys like Walt Corey, who was the coach, had just passed recently, was there in my corner fighting for me to give me that chance that a lot of people wouldn't have given me. So I'm very thankful for those men and the opportunity that they gave me. I still had to prove myself. I still had to do the work and put in the work, but I was willing to do that. All I was looking for was just an opportunity, and Kansas City gave me that opportunity.
I actually wanted to ask you this later, but I think this is the best time to get into it. Marv Levy, one of the more successful head coaches in NFL history, obviously got inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2001. The whole thing with him in Kansas City just didn't pan out, but he moved on to Buffalo and won a lot of games there, had a lot of success there. What was Marv Levy like for those who may not be as familiar with him as you are?
And Marv was the best. I mean, as far as I know, I'm glad that I had my first experience in the NFL with a coach of that caliber, because I really saw how he was successful as a coach. Number one, he let his coaches coach. He believed in that. He wasn't a micromanager, and he knew everything about every facet of the game. And I came to respect that even more when I began to go to Pro Bowls and I had coaches like Don Shula and Chuck Noll and Chuck Knox. And I watched those guys during that week that I was fortunate enough to be at that game. And man, it just was like, man, that's the way Coach Levy was. Here's a guy that understood special teams, understood offense and defense, let his coaches coach. And I saw in those great Hall of Fame coaches the same attributes, that they understood the game, they knew every facet of the game, they could teach every facet of the game, but more importantly, they weren't micromanagers. They let their coaches do their job and supported their coaches. And I learned a lot and gained a lot from him, just because of the person he was. And just to give you a quick story, when I retired, announced my retirement, we had a press conference, and after the press conference was over, I came down to the public relations office and they told me, "Hey, you got a phone call." And I go over and pick up the phone, and it was Coach Levy calling me, congratulating me on my career. Now, here's a guy, he didn't have to pick up the phone and call, but he found out that I was retiring and made my announcement, and he was the first person to call me and say congratulations on a great career. But it was because of him that I had that great career, because he was the guy that actually said, "Hey, we'll bring you back in and let you try out and play safety." So, man, what a great human being. What a man that just knew about players and gave them an opportunity, gave them a chance, and that's all you look for sometimes, is somebody to give you that opportunity.
Very cool. That is yeah, I'm glad I asked that. That's certainly, there are a lot of great stories about Marv Levy out there. And so that's very cool to hear that he gave you that big opportunity. During your career, one of the most successful games you had was early in the 85 season, your 4 interceptions against Dave Craig, who eventually ended up joining the Chiefs for a few years. What was it about that game? Like, did you just feel different during warmups in that game? Well, what allowed you to have such a successful game that day?
That was a crazy game. I mean, that game was nothing but a constant downpour the whole game. I remember, coming out, and we wore these gloves, and they were just regular tacky gloves, but because of the rain, they just got so wet that, everything you try to catch would just slip out your hands. But then the trainers had, equipment guys had these scuba gloves, right? That I guess you'd wear when it got rainy and wet. They were black, but they had a tackiness to them. Once the water hit them, they just seemed like they could grab everything. And I remember putting those tacky gloves on, scuba gloves, and shoot, I wound up having 4 interceptions in the game, and I had my hands on, I think all total, probably 9 passes that day that either slipped through my hands. I had the fifth one, which I would have broken the record, And I remember Lloyd Burris over, and there's 4 times in my career where I've been hit that really shook me a little bit. And he hit me one time, and I had the ball in my hands, and he knocked the ball out. And I would have had 5, which would have broken the record, but I had tied it with 4. But I remember that game because it rained the whole day. It was just like a downpour rain. There's no way. But in those games, the quarterback's throwing the ball, you got an opportunity. I think the advantage is in the secondary because you can take your time because that quarterback, he's not going to sit there and drop back and try to look you off as much. And I had always had success against Seattle and Dave Craig and being able to read him a little bit because he had that long arm motion because he was such a short guy. But,
Yeah.
I was very fortunate and lucky to pick off 4 passes that day.
Didn't Derek Thomas get his sack record against Seattle also?
Yes, he did. He got
Okay.
it against them, and poetic justice, the sack that he missed.
Yeah.
I think it was David Craig that threw the ball down the field, and they scored a touchdown at the last minutes, and I think that was a game that kind of knocked us out of the playoffs that year. That was the first year Schottenheimer was here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about Marty Schottenheimer as well, because the 80s were kind of a rough year. I mean, there were some good players such as yourself, Joe Delaney, Christian Okoye, but there were a lot of head coaching changes that happened during the 80s. When Marty Schottenheimer and Carl Peterson came in as the new regime in 89, what was that transition like going from some of the struggles to Marty ball?
Yeah, that was, I was fortunate. I mean, I played for Marty in 2 Pro Bowls, so I kind of understood his mentality and the way he liked to play. And he was really defensive minded. It was all about being physical on defense and getting after people. And then on offense, it was just mainly just running. He came from Cleveland. He had some great running backs there. I think Greg Pruitt was there. Boyce Green was there, and liked to run the football and then rely on his defense really to shut people down, playing a lot of man-to-man defense, putting pressure on folks and just putting them in a position where it was your guy against our guy, and let's just go out and find out who the better man is. And that was his style of play. So understanding that coming in when he came here, the one thing that was different was, the front office was different. Carl Peterson was here. He understood football. He understood what we needed to have to be successful. And then having a coach who was more consistent in his style of play. But more importantly, had some great coaches with him. When you look at what Marty brought here, he brought some really great coaches. I mean, 2 Hall of Fame coaches that, he had with him, Bill Cowher and Tony Dungy. You can't say enough about those 2 guys and the impact that they had on our defense at the time. And then, on the offensive side, Howard Mudd, who was probably one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the game, Joe Pendry, who was the offensive coordinator. He had great people with him, and I think that kind of turned around our success here in Kansas City was having the new organization with Carl Peterson, the head coach with Marty Schottenheimer, and then, building on the great assistant coaches that he had, and then bringing in, better players, drafting a guy like Derek Thomas. Neil Smith was already here, but drafting Derek Thomas and some of the other players that we drafted, Christian Okoye, and we
Yeah.
brought in Barry Word, and we had guys like that made a difference, and that helped us become a better football team and a winning football team where we were going back to the playoffs for the first time in a long time.
I've got to ask this. I think I've asked every guest I've had this question that's been on that 1991 team, but I've never asked anyone who was on the field when this happened. But there's that memorable moment in December of 91 when John Elway turned to the officials and was trying to get help from the officials to quiet the crowd noise at Arrowhead, which today that's just for something like that would be crazy. What do you remember about that moment? Because I remember seeing like Derek Thomas and Neil Smith just kind of like firing up the crowd whenever Alloway would step away. What do you remember about that specific moment when he turned to the ref and the ref was asking the crowd to be quiet, essentially?
Yeah, that's probably the worst decision John Elway made in his entire career at Denver was to try to look at the official and try to quiet that crowd. Because if you remember, we played Buffalo, I think it was maybe a couple years before that on a Monday night. And it was the first Monday night game ever back in Kansas City. And Buffalo was coming off of a Super Bowl. They had won the AFC and they were coming to Kansas City. And that game that night was when I think the heartbeat of Arrowhead came back into existence, or the new heartbeat, and the crowd noise was just unbelievable. And I think we beat them. I think it was like a whitewash win. I don't think they scored a touchdown. We scored maybe 30 some points or something like that. It was it was an amazing night. I mean, it was just like a smoke that was entirely engulfed the stadium from all the tailgating and the barbecue. And that's when Arrowhead changed. I mean, that's when the Chiefs Kingdom changed. And to me, that spoke volumes to what the organization would eventually become, with the fan base and Chiefs Kingdom. And then you go forward to that game, and he's asking for a timeout, knowing that the crowd noise was exceptional, and had built up to a point where Arrowhead became such a huge home field advantage for us and the team. Was it was just crazy to me that he would even signal to quiet the crowd. That only made it worse. It only got louder. And I know that there were times when the Chiefs broke the noise, the record for the loudest stadium. But I guarantee you, if they would have had a decibel machine that day, that record would probably be a lot higher than what it's registered at right now.
Should have the Guinness Book of World Records there that night. That would
Yeah,
have been interesting to
yeah.
see what that number would have been. One last thing I wanted to ask you about your career, and then I wanted to ask a couple of questions about the current team. You obviously had a very successful career. We've kind of gone over some of the highlights from your career. You made the All-Decade team for the '80s. A lot of people from that All-Decade team, they're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You're not one of those guys in the Hall of Fame in Canton. So I just wanted to ask you, and I don't know how many times you've been asked this, but do you feel like you're deserving to be in Canton with the rest of those guys?
I mean, you know, I think I leave it up to other people, and I've had so many people call me and go, "Why aren't you in?" And it's there are other players that don't have the career accomplishments that I had. And and I think when you play for an organization, and I guess you're always measured on Super Bowls, right? Well, we didn't get that opportunity. We weren't fortunate enough to get that opportunity. But I think if anybody asks you, um, you know, did this person play like a Hall of Famer? I guarantee you there's no one out there that could dispute the fact that not only myself, but if you look at a guy like Art Still, you look at a guy like Albert Lewis, these are guys that played up to that caliber as a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but we don't have that Super Bowl behind our name. So I think it's sad, and then I think in my case it's even more sad because I haven't even been looked at. My career accomplishments haven't been looked at. I haven't even been put out there to say, hey, look what this guy did over his career. There's nobody that did it better over a portion of his career. Not even Ronnie Lott, not even Kenny Easley. Yeah, but these guys are in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not. So as much as I could say that it saddens me. I mean, I think at some point in time, maybe that record will be looked at, and people will have a different look at it because when you think about our secondary during the 80s, there was no better secondary in the entire history of the National Football League that was in Kansas City at that time. And I think Paul Zimmerman, who was a big writer for Sports Illustrated, even said that might have been the best secondaries in the entire history of the National Football League during the 1980s, with myself, Kevin Ross, Albert Lewis, and Lloyd Burris.
Yeah.
There was not another secondary that could compare to this secondary. So for us to not even get the recognition as some of these other guys that are being inducted in the Hall of Fame, it's sad to see, but hopefully that will get corrected at some point in time.
No, I mean, listen. If I had a vote, I say you 100% deserve it. So hopefully, you do get that recognition in the near future. Hopefully, I want to ask you about this current Chiefs team. I mean, I know you were just talking about your defense and what it did, especially in the secondary. This Chiefs defense was incredible last year, especially with the offensive struggles, and people were a little nervous. Can this team kind of pull through? And they eventually did. The offense got it together in the postseason. Wasn't perfect, but they still found a way. But this defense looked really good last year. I want to know from your perspective as someone who's played on defense, had a great career. When you look at what Steve Spagnuolo did with this defense, the secondary, the pass rush, the linebackers, really a lot of great players from top to bottom on that defense. What did you make of the defense last year during their Super Bowl run?
Well, it wasn't just during the Super Bowl run; it was the entire season.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a defense that's holding teams under 28 points a game or whatever that number was that they held them to last year, and this is a passing league. It's no more like a grind them out. When Schottenheimer was here, it was like he would be happy with a 13-7 game or 10-3, 7-3 games. And it's not like that because the rules have changed and it benefits you to throw the ball down the field just because it's so much of an offensive passing game now. It's not a running game or just strictly, 3 yards in a cloud of dust anymore. So when you think about this defense and what they have to contend with each week, they're playing a tough schedule, it seems like every year, because they got to play the top teams in those divisions because they were the Super Bowl champions, right? So you think about that, 5 straight AFC championship games, having to play that schedule and play that many games to get through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. And then you look at what this defense has done as it's grown up with young players. You don't have, the 10, 11, 12-year guys that, in some clubs you have. These are younger guys. You got a core nucleus. You got the Chris Joneses and those guys that, solidified the leadership. But mostly this defense was young players, guys that are, under 5 years of being in the league. And they were able to compete like that. You look at the secondary, the guys in the secondary, you got, you don't have a number 1 pick. The most you got is a number 2 guy that turns out to be probably the best corner in all of football last year. There's an argument for that, that you can put out there. Then you had Snead that, was probably the best nickel corner in the league. And then you had, some cornerbacks that were 7th round picks that rounded out the secondary that just did an incredible job and the depth that we had there. And then you had at safety, Justin Reed. Unfortunately, Brian Cook got injured early in the year, but we had enough depth to bring somebody in to make up for that. So, man, you got to give that coaching staff, not just Coach Spags, but every single one of those coaches that are getting those guys ready to play, especially guys that are young, that are getting drafted in the 7th, 6th, 7th round of the NFL draft, and to come on and play and perform the way they've done over the last 2-3 years, it's just amazing. So yeah, I'm high on this defense. Yeah, we're gonna lose Snead, but the mentality of this team is the next guy is up. The next guy step up and get the job done. And I think they're gonna be fine up front. Their linebackers are great, you know. We did lose Willie Gay, and somebody's going to have to step in for him. But the core nucleus of this defense is still intact. And I was up there yesterday and got a chance to see them, and I think they could potentially be even better this year.
I'm really excited to see Shamari Connor. I think Justin Reed's a very underrated safety. You mentioned Brian Cook coming back from that injury, and hopefully he's feeling a lot better going into this season. But Shamari Connor, I think, is going to play a lot more, especially with Mike Edwards moving on to Buffalo. Like, he's a very young guy that seemed to have a good grasp of the coverage that was expected out of him. I'm really excited to see what he can do in his second year in the NFL.
Well, I think he'll do well because I think that what the coaching staff has showed him is that they have a lot of confidence in what he can do out there on the field. They've given him some opportunities early in his career that really have given him a sense that, hey, they have confidence in me if they're going to put me out there and let me play. And when he's been out there, he's been a contributor. And that's something that most young players, they don't get that opportunity because the coaches are a little bit skeptical about putting you out there. So I think when you go out there and you prepare yourself and you're out there making plays, it gives coaches more confidence, and then you see more playing time. And that's the way my career was, being able to give coaches a sense that they can trust you. And that's the key word, is trust, because most coaches, that's all they're looking for, is that, hey, when I turn on this film, can I trust that this guy is going to be in the right position? He's going to understand what I expect of him on the defensive side and his responsibility. And if he can do that consistently, in practice, and then do it consistently in the games, they're going to give you your opportunities. And I think that's what he's seeing from the coaching staff right now.
A couple of other questions before we let you go, and I do appreciate your time, Deron. I know you've been very well connected with this organization over the years since you stepped away from football. But obviously, we for a long time, this fan base waiting patiently for that star quarterback, and finally got him in Patrick Mahomes. I just want to know, from your perspective, as someone that's gone up against a lot of great quarterbacks, what do you make of what Patrick Mahomes has done, especially last year when the offense, things were not going and not clicking the way anyone on this team and fan base wanted it to go? Still found a way at the end of the day, and he's done a whole lot. A lot of people, there were a lot of naysayers too when Tyreek Hill got traded. People thought he would start to struggle and fail, and Travis Kelce would struggle as well and get double teamed more. But Patrick's always found a way, and I think a lot of guys on this offense deserve the credit as well. I just want to know, from your perspective as a defensive back, what do you make from Patrick Mahomes and what he's been able to do his entire career?
Well, I think for me, watching him, the one thing that I see is a quarterback who's never satisfied with his previous accomplishments, that he's always looking to get better. And how does he get better? By getting better himself, he's able to elevate his teammates and his whole entire team, because he's got to make adjustments. Every year in the National Football League is different. You're never going to have the same players that are the same guys on your team, and you have to adapt. And you're also adjusting to what the defenses are doing, because guarantee you that those coaches are going into those off seasons, and the one film that they're putting on is Kansas City, right? They want to see, because that's the measuring stick. They want to see, okay, what can we do to make give ourselves a better opportunity at beating Mahomes and Andy Reid and those things. So they're studying them every year. So you can't rest on what you've done. You got to continue to get better, continue to look at film and improve on the mistakes that you think that you've made. And the fact that he was able to adjust even last year from a situation where he didn't have, Tyreek Hill, he had different receivers. He had a rookie in Rice that he had to get used to throughout the course of the year. You still had Kelce, but you still had guys that, you were hoping on, and those guys being a part of it, like Kadarius Toney having a year on it, he coming in at the end of that previous year and then having a full year, and then he gets injured, and he's dropping passes, and it's frustration for the quarterback. But to continue to still improve and get better and understand what you need to do to make your team successful. Patrick Mahomes is special. These guys only come around once in a generation. And when I was playing, we had an opportunity to maybe get one of those, and Dan Marino at the time, when we took Todd Blackledge and Miami took Dan Marino, and you could see two franchises went entirely, totally different directions, because of the quality of the guy that plays at that position, that wants to be successful and has that knack to elevate his teammates. And that's what you see in Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, as long as we have a guy like that that shows that humility and the ability to want to get better and improve every single year, you've got a gem there, and you gotta take advantage of that as long as you have him.
Last thing I want to ask you, this receiving core, everybody's excited because everyone feels like there's going to be a big improvement. There's definitely a lot more speed this year than last year with Hollywood coming in, drafting Xavier Worthy, Rashi Rice, another year under his belt. You mentioned his name. And McCole Hardman's coming back. You know what he can do with his speed. Kadarius Toney, they're giving him another opportunity. People feel like this is
Yep.
going to really help take the load off Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco. And a lot of people feel like, defenses have to really respect the receivers and might not be able to stack the box, which could be great news for Isaiah Pacheco. But I want to know from you, because I don't know if I would want to be a defensive back going against that unit right there so fast. What do you make when you see that crew?
Well, the old adage in the NFL is speed kills, right? So when you got speed like that, you can do a lot of things. And I think literally this is going to make Travis Kelce, so much better too. I mean, I think he's not going to have as many double teams because let's face it, people would think that he's getting old and in years and can't run as fast as he used to run. But I was watching him in practice yesterday, and he was getting down the field and getting open. And I think anybody that mistakes that Travis is at the end of his career and can't have a productive season, I think they're short-sighting themselves, and especially when they've got this speed on the outside now that, Patrick can go up top. And, you see him in practice, you see him going up top quite a bit to those guys on the outside. And I mean, the versatility that they're going to have, I mean, it's this offense at the end of the year was explosive, but I think it's going to be even more explosive. And then you add guys like Pacheco into the mix, and even Clyde Edwards-Helaire. People bash that guy, but man, when he's been on the field, he's been productive, and he's gotten some things done, and he's helped this football team win a lot of football games. It's just a matter of keeping him healthy. But they have the ability to be just as explosive as they were, the first couple years that Patrick was behind the center and when he had Tyreek here, especially with the speed that they'll have on the outside. If I'm a defensive guy, I mean, I'm shaking in my boots because I know it's not easy to cover an offense that does that much motioning and adjusting, and they just seem to get open. And Patrick has seen every coverage now, so he knows exactly where he wants to go with the ball. And I feel bad for some of these teams because they're just going to continue to get better offensively, and that's a frightening thing for the league. Trust
Uh,
me.
I just want the games to start, man. Like I love all the training camp highlights, but give me the games. I just want to see it all to put to the test. I'm very
And
excited.
training camp is just basic stuff. It's not
Yeah.
like they're working on stuff, but when they get into the season and they get the game plan against these defenses and teams, and you get to, showcase, different weapons that you have. I think this kid Wiley is going to be an important part of the mix. And, when you start seeing that, I mean, it's just like, okay, what is Andy drawing up this week? What is Andy drawing up? How can we get this guy open? I mean, it's amazing, the growth of this offense over the years, and the fact that now you got Patrick who's understanding even more what he's capable of and not capable of. And you add him to the mind of Andy Reid, that guy being on the field as a coach. I mean, he's going to see things so much quicker. He's going to be able to do things so much better. It puts this offense in rarefied air, be honest with you.
Well, I think it's safe to say we are all looking forward to this upcoming season, Deron. One last time, Deron, before you go, I just want to let everyone know, for those who may be tuning in a little later, you have the celebrity golf tournament for the Deron Cherry Foundation. That is taking place on September the 23rd and September the 24th. That is the 32nd annual celebrity golf tournament. Get a chance to play some golf and rub elbows with some celebrities, some Chiefs alums, and even some guys on the active team. And you also have the celebrity tailgate party on September the 21st. The QR code is right there for those on the audio version, DeronCherryFoundation.org for more information there. Is there anything you wanted to add to that before we let you go?
No, we still have available spots. We're selling tickets to the tailgate party. There are 100, I think 150 a piece. We're only selling 100 and giving, the public an opportunity to come and enjoy this special evening where we can raise money to support our charities. And you'll get the chance to rub elbows with some of the past Chiefs players that will be there for the event that night. And we're just excited that, hey, we made it. This is our 32nd year. And with so many tremendous sponsors that have been with us all 32 years is just incredible. So looking for a great night to raise money to help support our community, and then have 2 fun days of golf. So, the golf is 2 days. You can pick your day you want to play. We have competitions on both days. And this year, the winner of the tournament will have an opportunity to go to play in a special tournament at Whistling Straits, 72 holes of golf. So it's going to be really special. And we have probably one of the best tee packages you would ever find in a golf tournament will be at our event this year. So come on out. We still have hole sponsors. We have the ability for you to volunteer if you'd like to come out and volunteer your time to these worthy causes. And we're going to have 2 days of tremendous golf in September.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Deron, thank you again so much for your time. Deron Cherry Foundation, for anyone that would like any more information. Big thanks once again for you for taking time to talk and connect with us here on the podcast. Best of luck to you, and hopefully we can celebrate another Super Bowl this season.
Absolutely. And anytime you need me back on, man, just holler. Be more than happy. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you so much, Deron. You take care.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
That was Deron Cherry, Chiefs Hall of Famer, joining us here on the Chiefs Zone podcast. A lot of great stuff there from the Chiefs Hall of Famer. Appreciate all of you guys who tuned in to this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Share the link button if you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed the conversation with Deron. Share it. Let your friends know about the podcast. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as well. YouTube.com/@thechiefszone. So make sure you guys are subscribed, following, and all that good stuff. Helps push out the algorithm and spreads the word about the Chiefs Zone podcast. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Once again, thank you all. Take care. We'll talk to you tomorrow.